You've probably taken one look at the title of this tutorial and thought, oh my word, what on earth is he on about, working with non-diatonic chords? That sounds like rocket science. It isn't really, and it's also a kind of useful thing to think about, because non-diatonic chords are something that we come up against in probably not the majority of chord progressions, but pretty close. A very large minority of chord progressions contain what we call non-diatonic chords. What do I mean by that? Okay, if you are familiar with the basics of harmony, if you've watched your channel in the past, you'll know that in any major key, and it's major keys that I'm focusing on today, the so-called diatonic scale. In any major key, there are certain chords which are natural to that key. Okay, say we're in the key of C major, that's the scale of C major. The chords that are natural to that key are the triads, are based on the triads that have their root on each note of the scale. So the notes of the scale are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And the natural chords in the key of C major are C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, and then back up to C. Okay, say we're in B flat major, the scale of B flat major goes B, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, and the chords again are the triads built on those notes. Sorry, losing it. B flat, C minor, D minor, E flat, F, G minor, A diminished, and back up to B flat. Okay. Now, the technical term for those, because the major scale is what we call the diatonic scale, we call those diatonic chords. If we're playing a song in a major key and come across a chord which isn't natural to that key, in other words, which isn't naturally based on one of those, following the pattern of major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major, then it's what we call a non-diatonic chord. Okay, and they are pretty common. Now, I've had one or two questions come in saying, look, how do we deal, when we're improvising or comping, how do we deal with non-diatonic chords? The short answer is, it kind of depends on the style of music that you're playing. Yeah. If you're playing in bluesy or jazzy styles, then that's a rather different business from coming across non-diatonic chords in more contemporary pop styles. Let's have a look at some examples. A chord progression I was looking at not very long ago was the one for Georgia on My Mind, the very famous Hoagy Carmichael song, popularised by Ray Charles. And it's got a non-diatonic chord as its very second chord. So it's in the key of F, but the second chord is A7. Okay, so think about the key of F major, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F, and the natural chord that will be built, the diatonic chord that will be built on the third note, would be A minor. Not A major, because there's no C sharp in the key of F, it would be A minor. But instead of putting A minor there, Hoagy Carmichael writes in A7, which is obviously based on a simple A major chord. So the essential progression goes F to A7, and then goes to D minor, which is back to a diatonic chord. Now, because we're fairly jazzy there, what we can do is essentially ignore, if you like, the fact there's a non-diatonic chord in the left, and almost treat it as if it's part of the key. Let me show you what I mean. So let's say that we're improvising on the blues scale of F in the right hand. Okay. Okay. Really sort of jazzy sound against a non-diatonic chord, moving back to the D minor and then carrying on through the progression. Okay, let's say we're using pentatonic scale of F in the right hand. Okay. Yeah. So in other words, the note that really clashes is there. Okay, because we've got the C sharp in the left and the C natural, which is part of the pentatonic scale of F major, which we can comfortably improvise on in an F major song, in the right. But the kind of clash is cool because we're playing, you know, a jazzy bluesy style, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, it seems to fit the style. And there's another non-diatonic chord. Later on in the progression we get to B flat minor 7. Okay, and again, although we could include some notes from the chord in there, we can quite happily play our regular jazz scales in the key of F in the right hand. It doesn't matter, and that's partly what creates the distinctive harmonic sound of jazz. Playing your particular jazz chords, you know, whether it's pentatonic or blues or diatonic or whatever, against those non-diatonic chords in the left. Okay, so that's jazz. Once we get into rock and pop, it's slightly different. Okay, very many pop songs and rock songs include non-diatonic chords, but they usually treat them as if they're mini key changes. Okay, classic example in exactly the same key is the Beatles' Yesterday, Paul McCartney's Yesterday, I should say. Okay, starts in F, E minor, which is still diatonic, and then goes to A, just like Georgia. Yeah, before going back to D minor, which again is diatonic in the key of F, a diatonic chord. Okay, there things happen differently. Let's look at that. Whoops. Okay, notice that the right hand melody, because the chord has gone to A, takes on that C sharp. Okay, if we were to play in our improvisation something that didn't fit that, say we were accompanying Yesterday. Okay, it might work for jazz, doesn't work for that. Okay, so it's like a mini key change. So that's how we handle it, whether we're comping or whether we're improvising melody. If we're playing jazz, if we're playing that, you know, those kind of styles, then you can let the melody be more independent of the chords, and it doesn't matter if we're playing diatonic notes against a non-diatonic chord. With more modern, you know, sort of pop songs and rock songs, which actually, and this is the really interesting thing about 20th century popular music, it's become, you know, pop music started to become actually much more conservative after the 1950s and 60s. Yeah, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, socially, it drove a kind of great revolution, but compared to the pop music of the 30s and 40s, in sort of harmonic terms, what started happening in the 50s, 60s, 70s is much more conservative, much closer to classical chord progressions. Okay, so if you look at the Beatles, if you look at David Bowie, if you look at the Stones, their progressions have more in common with, you know, Bach or Beethoven than they do with what had happened 20 or 30 years before, you know, with jazz and that kind of stuff. So with the more modern music, with more contemporary music, you know, take it more conservatively in the right hand. If you have a non-diatonic chord in the left, try to match those use the note from that chord in the right. If you're playing jazz, don't worry about it. Okay. I mean, one good way to practice this is to find some chord progressions which have non-diatonic chords in them. Lots of jazz progressions do. In fact, there aren't many jazz progressions that don't contain non-diatonic chords. For pop progressions, then a lot of Beatles songs have non-diatonic chords, but let's think of some famous pop and rock songs with non-diatonics. All the Young Dudes, Motley Crue and David Bowie, has a whole sequence of non-diatonics. If you like the Rocky Horror Show, that has virtually every song in that has the kind of non-diatonic chords. First song in its science fiction double feature. It's based on the loop that does that. So diatonic, non-diatonic, diatonic, diatonic. Okay, F, E flat, B flat, C. They're pretty easy to find. Okay, one of the reasons that a lot of, particularly in the Rocky Horror Show, which was written by Richard O'Brien, who's a brilliant songwriter, but a lot of the reasons that non-diatonic chords work like that in pop songs is to do with the fact that a lot of people who write them are not trained musicians. And if you're writing a song on a guitar, and a very easy way to come up with non-diatonic progressions is just by making a bar chord on the neck of the guitar and sliding it up and down. So that's when Richard O'Brien was writing that song. That's almost certainly how he did it. Start with an F chord somewhere, go down to an E flat, something like that. Anyway, I'm blethering now. So if any of that doesn't make sense, let me know. It's not actually that complex a concept. Those of you who are asking me the question about this sort of stuff, I hope that kind of answers it. Okay, there we go. As usual, just plug my book, How to Really Play the Piano. If you're not sure about chords, if chords and harmony, all that kind of stuff, boggles your brain, have a look at my book. It's £14.95 UK pounds for the print edition, £9.95 for the digital edition, and it's got loads of stuff. You won't get post-it notes on the back, sorry. It's got loads of stuff in the front on understanding harmony, and in the back there are things like charts of chords and things like that, and various other good bits in between. Okay, so there we go. As I say, any questions, give me a shout, but otherwise I will see you again soon.